as an industry, sell more than $400 billion. We produce 20 billion pairs or more. We grow 3 to 4% a year, generating billions of additional revenue. But today we're going to focus on a much, much smaller number, but much more important. The 60 million artisans who produce the garments and the shoes that we sell and wear. As has been said several times today, as we learn more and more about the fast-changing needs of the billions who buy and wear our products, it highlights the urgency to transform our supply chains from a push to a pull. Blake mentioned it today. Why? Because consumers, as you well know, are demanding continuous fresh flow of new product, requiring speed of delivery, flexibility to produce a plethora of new SKUs in much, much smaller batches. Consumers are also looking, as has been stated a few times today, for brands who are authentic about their authenticity. And we're not just talking about checking off your social compliance obligations. We're talking about truly caring about the welfare of the artisans who labor to make our products. As engineers looking from the outside in our company, we see huge resources being put on the front end of our businesses, and we've had many demonstrations today. Spending a lot of money on technology and experiences in the stores, omni-channel, et cetera. But we see very few people working on the back end. The back end meaning the factories that produce our products. We believe that to succeed in the future, you really have to own your factories. Bob told me that he just bought a factory 2 years ago. That, I imagine, will begin to happen more and more, because the only way that you're going to be able to compete in the future is to do what Adidas and Nike have done, New Balance also here in production in the United States and in Asia, is to really own the relationship. Strategic partnership instead of transactional relationships with your factories. Set targets and quotas to improve defects, productivity, transparency. Really know where your product is being made. Many times, we don't really know, as uppers are produced in facilities that are not approved. But even when we work on this balance between the front end and the back end, we are confronted by a huge obstacle, a virtual barrier. And that's the disconnect between the voice of the consumer and how we operate and manage our manufacturing shop floor in our industry. What if our pharmacists filled our prescriptions at the rate that we generate defects in our shoes? What if our planes, except the 737, break down at the rate that our machines do on the shop floor? What if the transparency and accuracy and speed of our POS data was equal to that we have on the data coming from our shop floor? For those that are really involved in operations in our industry, we joke about 3 sets of data. One is the reality of what happens on the shop floor, right the first time quality, productivity, meeting cycle times, quick changeover times. Second thing is what the middle management in a factory tells upper management, the ownership. And the third thing, even for the leading athletic brands who are the most sophisticated in owning the relationship with their factories, is what gets put on the whiteboards or printed out in beautiful Excel spreadsheets when top management of these brands go through the factory. What if the answer to exponential improvement in your factories was not artificial intelligence and robotics, which many talk about, but actually what we call HI, human intelligence? What if, as an industry, for the first time, we truly activated and engaged the hearts and minds of the family of 60 million artisans, rather than simply, as we do today, only use their arms and legs? It's the reality of our industry today, folks. Our factories are being run like Henry Ford designed 100 years ago. And once again, as engineers, we laugh about it because it's sad. Every industry has gone through this, whether it was Toyota, who started the automobile industry transformation 70 years ago, electronics, Samsung, Dell, 20 years ago. We believe it's time, because of the burning platform, the need to meet the consumer's demands, that our industry on the shop floor is going to go through a major, major transformation. What if our 60 million artisans were actually our friends? We believed in them, engaged them, and partnered with them. Last fall, we were in Indonesia executing a process optimization transformation of a factory for a major athletic brand. And we have something called the Oreo, or it's also called the sandwich technique, where when you're trying to give feedback to somebody, you start with a positive comment, you give the feedback, corrective feedback, and then you end with a positive comment. So we had all the supervisors in a room, we taught them the sandwich or the Oreo technique, and we said, we're going to coach you 3 times a day for the next week until you, to help you improve your communication with the artisans. And at the end of the week, we invited them again, and we said, what did you learn? And a woman supervisor rose her hand, and she said, we thought they were the enemy. We thought they were the enemy. What if we could activate our artisans? I'll show you what a typical production line, unfortunately, is in our industry today. You have a very defective shoe, a shoe a toddler would not want to buy because it's clearly defective. And I'm sure many of you have walked into factories and seen this. Workstation number 1, shoe gets worked on, goes to the second workstation. It ends up on the lasting machine. The defective shoe ends up getting put in a box, the lid gets put on, and the box goes into a MasterCard. For those who have walked a factory floor in Asia, what were the emotions when you saw this defective shoe just going from one artisan to the next? Was it actually anger at times and maybe displaced at the wrong people? Imagine the production line of the future, where I'm in a workstation and Lee is beside me, and I call Ann and I say, Ann, please. She's the supervisor. She comes over and I tell her, I've already detected 3 defective shoes. Lee is working on the roughing machine. He just started this morning, and the last time we had a rookie, the problem was nobody had showed him the angle at which to put the shoes so that it wouldn't destroy 10s, 20, 30 shoes during his first or her first day of production. That doesn't happen today, and that's where we need to go if we're going to start delivering the quality that's required by home deliveries? What if we took the time and energy to coach our artisans? Starting with the example I just gave, if you were to go do a test of every single artisan and ask them, what is a defect? What is the defect that your workstation produces? They would be totally clueless. So what if we taught them, coached them, engaged them, sparked their interests, gave them purpose, and made them proud of what they're doing? That's what the video was about. They really are artisans, but we're not treating them, unfortunately, that way. And through this, we turned each and every artisan into a guardian of quality. And we started aiming, as other industries have, to a mission of 0 defects in our factories. Instead of the current, we call it 3 Ps. We police it at the end before it gets put into a container. Some of us police it in warehouses. I'm talking about quality in Asia. And then even worse, we spend the time, energy, and resources to police it when it arrives at our distribution centers and wherever they might be, Europe, the United States. I don't know if you know, but our entire industry is predicated on sample-based inspections, and it's called acceptance quality level, where you define what percentage of quality you are willing to ship. If you have 4% of AQL, acceptance quality limit, 1.5 for major defects, 2.5 for minor, the statistics behind that indicate that 10% of your orders will have 16.5% or more of defects. That's the reality of how we work today. The future, we have to transform our production lines to aim for 0 defects. What if our artisans had performance goals and didn't have to work in a vacuum? As William Deming said more than 50 years ago, you can't improve what you don't measure. Today, the artisans work in a total vacuum. What if they could visualize each one individually, in real time, their own performance? Make them not only proud of their work, but also gamify it. Have them compete, one cementer against another, one rougher, one laster, one production line against another line, one factory in your ecosystem against another factory. What if we invested in educating our artisans versus the dreaded fear of 2% or more monthly turnover? In 2018, in the United States, in manufacturing, there was 30% turnover. 30%, 2.5% per month. That's more than some well-run factories in Asia. Yet, in manufacturing in the United States, we spend 3 to 4% of revenue in education. Unfortunately, in our factories, there'd be a lot of zeros after the decimal place before you found out the number with respect to how much factory owners. They fear and they're not willing to invest because the people will leave. And that's in generic across factories in our industry. What if we insisted, as Joe mentioned at New Balance, hiring engineers from MIT? What if we insisted, retailers, brands, wholesalers, that our factories start having the first engineer by such a date, the second one, the third one? And then we requested that they get educated and trained to get their green belt, black belts in Lean and Six Sigma. And through that new talent, we would be able to further activate and engage our artisans, teach them how to use data, structured, quick meetings with specific agendas, where they arrived with the data so that they could understand the reasons for waste in their factory. They could design root cause, corrective action plans, and continuous improvement. A great example of all of this is Esquel Group, major manufacturer of shirts. They have 100 engineers, Chinese engineers in their factory. Chairman is from MIT. The vice chairman is from MIT. We believe that you don't have to have an MIT graduate, that it can be spurred by all of you by simply setting goals for your factories and making them achieve it. That's what we call owning the relationship, building a strategic partnership with your companies. What if all the changes I've described here produce a bottom-up revolution? Creating new behaviors, bringing around new habits, and instilling the values of transparency, accountability, positive energy, responsibility, resulting in new cultures in all of our factories. What if, because of this, our family of artisans helped improve productivity 20, 30, 40%? And because of this, our unit costs dropped year in, year in. And then we could afford to pay them more and have them earn a decent living. What if, because of this, we eliminated billions in manufacturing waste, as in lean waste, and at the same time increased the capacity of our industry to absorb the future 20, 25, 30% growth 5, 6, 7 years down the line, as the hundreds of millions of middle class in China and India started buying more of our products. And therefore, we could achieve real sustainability. And what do we mean by that? With the same infrastructure today, not one more factory, the same electricity, the same water consumed by those factories, the same waste emitted, we could absorb that future growth. What if, because of this, we won the hearts of 60 million souls and the billions who wear our products? What if? Thank you. Open it up to questions.
Hi. You mentioned that you did a 3-week training as an example from one of your factories. Could you possibly speak a bit more about what that training might look like?
You know, one of the, and somebody mentioned it, I forget, maybe it was Joe, it's all about change management. You could hire an industrial engineer from Georgia Tech, Stanford, Cornell, and send him to a factory in the Far East, and it's like nirvana for an industrial engineer. It's so beyond ridiculous to improve productivity by 15, 20, 25%. We're doing it all the time. Even a country like Myanmar, Egypt, Ethiopia. But if you go back 6 months later, because you didn't work on the change management, so it's all about structured meetings, first teaching them how to use data, structured meetings with simple agendas where people bring in that real, authentic data, because without data, you can't fix anything. And then something we call standard work for leaders, which is basically teaching the middle management in the factory the new behaviors and habits that are going to bring about the values that create a new culture. So we have workshops every week, and whether it's on line balancing or building a supermarket inside the factory so that the production line never runs out of materials, or setting up a preventive maintenance program. At the end, those workshops have to turn into what we call homework. And then you coach them during the week to make sure that they've learned the lesson. And that's how you start creating the behaviors, habits, values, and culture. So it's like raising a child, right? You don't just go in there 1 or 2 weeks and expect that you come back when they're 4 or 5 and everything is peachy keen. So it's a lot of hand-holding, but that's how we bring transformation around. It's actually pretty cool, pretty impressive.
Hi. Nice to see you again. So you know that these are initiatives that we're behind, and you're speaking to the choir with Farrell Robin. One of the things that we struggle with is how to quantify the benefits of things like childcare, and working very closely with our artisans, and we've implemented a lot of the things that you're speaking about now, and we're super proud of it. But we know that in order to get the rest of the industry involved in initiatives like this, we need to quantify it for them so that they can see the return on investment in order to get more engagement.
So I think the simple way, thanks, great point. One of the biggest problems we have in our industry, when I said 2% per month, that's a great factory. It's gotten better compared to years ago. I mean, I'd go into a factory and they'd tell me 25%. I go, well, not bad, and then they'd tell me it's per month. Bob, you've seen that. Every 4 months, everybody's new. What the hell are you going to teach? So programs like that, I think it's education and support. And as we well know, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would guess it's 70, 80% of the artisans in our industry are women. So creating childcare, support, and education is a way to lower your turnover. And the only way you're going to achieve continuous improvement, well, you know it. How are you going to work in headquarters if 1/4 of your staff leaves every year, right? So it's all about taking care of the artisans so that they can take care of us and ultimately the consumer. And it's bridging that gap between the artisan understanding. They have no clue. They don't care. Because nobody's taught them to understand that they really are producing a product that's going to be used by somebody in New York, Paris, and have pride in what they're doing. But they're working in a vacuum, and nobody talks to them. In fact, keep quiet. Just keep using your arms and legs. And that's what I'd love to get the support of the industry to start changing that, because you will see, I mean, we've been doing it for 6 years with our consulting practice. It's amazing to see how people light up just because you're treating them as human beings. It's really a lot of fun.